So let's refresh a couple more times. 2, 3, 4. So now our count should equal to 4. So we've successfully created our function to update the count value. However, what we need to do now is we need to check whether our IP address already exists in the table, but we haven't actually input our IP address into the table yet. So we need to do that first. So let's change this back to 0. Okay, so let's not call this update count function for now. Now, what we've got now is a function that's going to work. Let's just get rid of this if statement. It's not required at all. We just are updating the query there, and if it doesn't work, we're silencing this anyway. So because it doesn't really matter anyway. Okay, so we've created our function which is update the count. That works, and we can use that later on to update the count if this function returns true, so if the IP address does exist. So let's first of all, up here, every time our page is run, we want to store the user's, oh no, sorry, okay, so update count is fine. We've got IP exists, and we also want a function. I didn't think this through properly, obviously. We need IP add, and this is going to add an IP address to our database. So again, we're taking in IP, and okay, yeah, so IP add. So we need to add an IP address to our table. Our table is, just refresh this to blank that. Our table is hits IP, and our field is IP. So what we want to do is we want to first of all create a query, and this is going to be equal to insert in capitals, insert into, and our table name is hits IP. Insert into IP values, and we only have one value, so that's it. Values is the IP that we specify in here, so that can just be IP like that. Now we come down and we say query run equals MySQL query. Okay, so let's just first of all get rid of that, and we need to call this function. So what we're doing is down here we're calling the function, we're saying IP add, and the IP that we want to specify is the user IP. So we call this function, the user IP, which we've grabbed from our server data, is transferred through to this function and is added to the database, because we're taking this argument here and putting it in here. Okay, so user IP is added to a database. Now let's check if this was working. Let's go back and refresh. Okay, let's go into browse, and you can see that our IP address has been added. Okay, so we also have a problem here in the fact that a duplicate entry might exist, so we might have two of the same IP address in here. However, we're going to do this later on in our if statements. We're only going to add an IP if it doesn't already exist in the database, and that's what we have. Let's just delete this function. That's what we have this function IP exists for. Now remember, we got the global user IP from here, so we're accessing this IP address from outside the function. Now we need to, well, I've added the IP into the IP address, and now we can check if it's there or not. So we're going to perform the check first of all while it is in there, then we're going to perform the check after I've manually deleted it. So IP exists. First thing we need to do is create a query, and the query is select IP from, and we can put these in there, select IP from hits IP where IP is equal to user IP. Now let's run this function, and then I'll explain a bit about what we're doing, or what we're going to do. Okay, so this function is going to select an IP address, which we don't need to do. We could have selected star, but I've just specified it. From the hits table, where we've already got one IP address, which is 127.0.0.1, where the IP equals my current IP address. Now what we can do is we run the query and we can return the amount of rows returned. Now if the rows returned is equal to 1, this means that the address already exists in the database. If we return a 0 rows, so no rows, then the IP address doesn't. And remember, we do this using the MySQL num rows function.